Welcome to tonight's special episode. I, Joe the intern, also the voice of reason and occasional tea fetcher, have brought our team together as a whole for the first time to discuss something that's haunted the dark corners of the internet for years. Liminal spaces. You've seen the pictures: abandoned swimming pools, flickering office corridors, desolate parking structures. They stir something deep, don't they? Well, tonight we're taking a stroll, or maybe a liminal shuffle, into the eerie world of liminal spaces, or even the backrooms. They make you feel like you're stuck in a loading screen for reality. But what are they really? Well, according to Merriam-Webster, yes, I looked it up, don't judge, the word liminal is a noun meaning a state of place characterised by transitional or intermediate in some way. For example, in the film Venice, a liminal space is where the real and imaginary meet, or motels such as liminal spaces. Everyone there is either coming or going, so basically they're places in between, where things don't quite feel real and everything seems to hum in this weird off-key energy. And let's not forget the internet's obsession with these vibes. The backrooms, what some call the ultimate liminal space, literally spawned its own genre of horror. Just think what happens when you glitch out of reality and end up in an infinite maze of yellow wallpapered hallways, buzzing fluorescent lights and all sorts of things like that. Or even take The Shining, this classic horror movie that practically defined the aesthetic with its endless empty hotel corridors. People love these spaces because they're creepy and kind of nostalgic at the same time. Like maybe you've been there before, or at least dreamed about it. But are they just an internet thing? Some weird collective trauma dream of Gen Z and millennials? Or are there something more to these places? Something real? Well, I've gathered the Bethnal Dream team right here tonight to weigh in. These guys are the experts, and me, well, I'm just your friendly neighbourhood intern / host. Here we are to ask the questions you're too scared to Google, so sit tight, because this one's about to get real weird, like existential dread weird. Welcome to the Liminal Spaces episode. Well, that was quite the introduction, Joe. Thank you for your enthusiasm. Liminal spaces, as you've described them, are indeed real, but not the way your Instagram edits or internet forums imagine. They're just empty buildings or lonely hallways. These are places that exist at the margins of reality itself. Thresholds, you could call them. They might look mundane, but their significance lies in their nature. They are, as you said, transitions between states, not just the physical transitions like stepping through a door, but metaphysical and dimensional ones. It's like what happens in physics when you bend light near a black hole. You get gravitational lensing, a warp in a space and time itself. A liminal space, Joe, and I'm sure the team will agree, works simultaneously, but instead of just bending light, it bends the rules of existence. Think of them as zones where reality is less certain. That uncertainty is where the danger lies.
That's an interesting take, Felix. Well, I've never been to one personally, but I've seen what they can produce. When I worked for MI5, I was assigned to dissect a creature said to have originated from a void plane, one of these liminal zones. The file was redacted to the point of absurdity, but the specimen spoke for itself. It was enormous, vaguely humanoid in shape, but completely alien. Its structure was wrong. The bones were external, a grotesque scaffolding of jagged cartilage encasing its body like a cage. Inside, it wasn't flesh and organs like you'd expect. Instead, there was a translucent membrane, thin as tissue paper, stretched taut to hold a gelatinous core. It reminded me of a jellyfish or slug, soft, malleable, and utterly fragile. It felt incomplete, like it had been ripped from somewhere before it was fully formed. Whatever this creature was, it didn't belong in our world. It seemed transitional, caught between two states of existence. If void planes are liminal spaces, then they're not just thresholds. They're laboratories where reality is unfinished, half-created, and grotesque.
Wow, that is absolutely disgusting. And Edward, what's your take on it all?
What Imogen described reminds me of what we've heard from the Salem branch about thin spaces. These are places where the boundary between dimensions weakens, creating what can only be described as wounds in the fabric of reality. I've heard them called dimensional scars, and for good reason. They've been connected to some of history's strangest and most inexplicable phenomena. The Bermuda Triangle is probably the most famous example, a region infamous for strange disappearances, navigational anomalies, and reports of time dilation. Pilots have claimed their instruments went haywire, their planes covering hundreds of miles in minutes, as though the very rules of time had unraveled. But the Bermuda Triangle is far from unique. Take Salem, for example. The witch trials weren't just hysteria or religious extremism, at least not entirely. Some of the accused claimed to have seen strange figures or entered spaces that didn't feel right. There's speculation that these individuals may have inadvertently stumbled into thin spaces and encountered something beyond human comprehension. And once you've seen something like that, people in power are going to fear you. Maybe that's what happened, an encounter with the unknowable interpreted as witchcraft. Then there's Area 51, the supposed ground zero for extraterrestrial encounters. The stories from that region are consistent with thin space phenomena, odd lights, objects moving at impossible speeds, even reports of people losing time. Some researchers believe there's a rift beneath the base, a natural gateway, if you will. And that raises a troubling possibility. What if these sites aren't just accidents? What if they're points where our world intersects with others? Places where realities briefly touch? That would explain the intense government secrecy. If you had access to a tier in reality, you'd guard it with everything you've got. The most intriguing part, though, is how quantum mechanics might offer an explanation. Think of thin spaces as areas of superposition, where multiple realities overlap. In these zones, the normal rules of causality, what should happen and what must happen, become flexible. It's not just that strange things can occur, it's that strange things must occur because the stability of reality itself is compromised. Imagine walking through a room where the floor, walls, and ceiling are constantly shifting. You wouldn't know which way is up, and every step would feel uncertain. That's what these spaces are like on a fundamental level. Time, space, and logic don't behave as they should. And these scars seem to cluster. Look at the ley lines, those ancient pathways linked to mystical energy. Many of these thin spaces appear along those lines, as though the earth itself is channeled into these fractures. The Nazca lines in Peru, Stonehenge, the Devil's Sea off Japan, they all share these characteristics. The same patterns, the same inexplicable phenomena. It's as if something, whether natural or intentional, uses these places as junctions connecting worlds that were never meant to meet. That's the terrifying beauty of it. These spaces defy understanding because they're not bound by our reality. They're places where our world's rules stop applying and something else's rules take over. Something older, stranger, and far less forgiving.
Cheers, Edward. Nice one. I'm not much for theories, to be honest. You can talk all you like about superposition, void planes, or dimensional scars all you want. It doesn't mean much when you're standing in the middle of one. See, I've been there. Not on purpose, mind you. I was in Dartmoor, foggy patch of moorland that seemed ordinary enough. Locals talked about strange lights and whispers, so I went to investigate. The fog was thick, heavy, pressing against my chest, and everything went silent. Not just quiet, silent, like the world had stopped breathing. The trees were wrong. Their trunks stretched upward endlessly, twisting like reflections in a funhouse mirror. The ground wasn't ground anymore, it shimmered, almost alive, and I swear I could see shapes moving beneath it, slow, deliberate. I didn't want to find out what they were. I tried to leave, but every step felt like it took me further in. Time didn't even work properly. A single breath felt like hours, and then there were shapes. Half-formed things at the edges of my vision. They knew I didn't belong, but at the same time they didn't seem to care that I was there. And that was the worst part. It wasn't even hostility, it was indifference. And whatever they were, I was beneath their notice. Eventually I made it out. I don't remember how. One moment I was in that clearing and the next I was back in the fog, my skin cold, like it'd been drained. I'm telling you, Edward, if you ever find yourself in a place that feels too still, too empty, fucking run away. Don't think, don't look back, just run. Because if you don't, you might not leave at all. And if you do, you won't be the same. Okay, so to recap, these spaces are dangerous because of what's inside them, or just because of what they are? Well, I think I can answer that. Both, actually. The spaces themselves are inherently unstable. They're neither fully real nor fully unreal, which makes them unpredictable. The laws of physics become pliable, and time behaves much more like clay than a straight line. But the real danger is what they attract, or perhaps what they create. Entities born of these liminal spaces don't adhere to our logic or morality. They might not even recognize us as living beings. Interacting with one could be fatal, or worse, transformative. If you're very lucky, you might escape with nothing more than your sanity scarred, just like Virgil. But luck isn't something you can count on in a place where reality blends.
And if you do encounter something, assume the worst. If it's there for a reason. And whatever its reason is, it won't align with ours.
And don't think the danger ends when you leave. People have come back from thin spaces before, but not all of them came back whole. It's like trying to hold on to water with your hands. Something always slips through the cracks.
And some don't come back at all. As we draw this conversation to a close, it's clear that liminal spaces are far more than a curiosity. They're a phenomena that challenges the very fabric of what we think and understand about existence. These spaces, whether you call them void planes, thin places, dimensional scars, or backrooms, are zones where the rules falter, where our reality becomes negotiable. Perhaps they're accidents, tears in the cosmic design, or maybe they're more deliberate portals, laboratories, or even sanctuaries for entities beyond our comprehension. What's undeniable, though, that they're not meant for us. Humans thrive on rules, boundaries, and stability. In our liminal spaces, where those anchors don't exist, we become unmoored, fragile, small. Our curiosity, as powerful and wonderful as it can be, becomes a double-edged sword. These spaces do not care about our intentions, and they certainly won't accommodate to us. My advice is stay away. Leave the intrigue and wonder at the threshold. If you must explore, tread lightly and understand that you may not return the same, if at all. The price for entering these spaces isn't just steep, it's unknowable. And as we've heard tonight, the cost of not knowing can be far greater than the reward. Well, folks, there you have it. Liminal spaces, real, dangerous, and absolutely not aesthetic. As always, we at the Bethnal Archives are here to inform, investigate, and occasionally terrify. So until next time, stay safe, stay grounded, and for the love of everything sacred, stay out of abandoned malls. Very funny, Joe. Yes, good night, everyone. Okay, so thanks, guys. That was really good. By the way, Imogen, I was wondering if you fancy a drink.
A drink, you say?
Just, me and you with you. Not up to much later.
Well, Virgil, I suppose I could use a change of scenery. Dissecting eldritch anomalies and parsing redacted files all day does leave one rather parched. But fair warning, if you bore me, I'll be ordering the strongest thing on the menu. You're buying, after all.